Hello and welcome to this week's sports edition of the Scrimshaw Show. My name is Evan Scrimshaw. The Ottawa Senators have taken 3 points out of 4 since the Olympic break. The Leaf season is functionally over thanks to our dominating performance on Saturday night. And I've got Liam MacKinnon back to talk about the thing that's frankly occupying my mind more than basically anything these days, which is my beloved Ottawa Senators. Liam, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad, Evan. Not too bad. The Sens are playing very, very good hockey, and hopefully can turn the season around here and make the playoffs. Because I am craving success in my world after suffering very crushing losses in the World Series, the Super Bowl, and yes, the Olympics.
Yeah, no, we're not going to talk about the gold medal game. We outplayed the Americans. We lost. I had thought about doing like a post Olympics like podcast, but it's like we were just going to be sad on the pod, and like that. It was funny to see a game that was so thoroughly Canadian dominated. Like it did not require analysis. Everybody acknowledged what it was. Like there was nothing to be said. We lost. It was shit. We move. It's fine. The Sens have outplayed our opponents for 2 straight games. We lost to Detroit in overtime. We should have beat them. We kicked the shit out of the Leafs. Liam, I have always been the more confident one of the two of us on the Sens' ability to the Sens' ability to perform when it mattered most. You've always been the pessimist. Do you think the Sens are making the playoffs after these, first 2 games after the Olympic break?
Will you allow a cop-out answer, Evan?
I mean, if I have to, yes, but I'd like you to give a nod cop-out.
I would like to see what shakes out of the trade deadline before I declare myself a believer or not. I will refer back to my benchmark from the last episode, Evan, which was if the Sens are 4 points out on deadline day, I will mark myself down as an optimist, as a believer. I think I'm leaning more towards yes now than before. There's a few reasons. So I think the Sens have sustained a really high level of play. I was worried that perhaps it wouldn't carry over after the Olympic break. Nothing could be further from the truth. They dog-walked the Detroit Red Wings. They dog-walked the Toronto Maple Leafs. Unfortunately, didn't come up with 100% of the points there, as you mentioned. And that's kind of been the story of the season, pissing away points. But the Boston Bruins is the team we're chasing here. Make no mistake. You could make an argument for Detroit, who just apparently lost John Gibson today in their game against the Preds. But the Bruins are the 8th place team, and they are on a 97 or 96 point pace. So if you do the math, the Sens need at least another 30 points. That's 15 wins, or the equivalent of 30 points with overtime losses. And it's entirely doable. The Bruins have a tougher schedule than we do. And guess what, Evan? We've got a goalie who's posting 900 save percentage pretty regularly now. So that was always going to be the cure.
Yeah, no. For me, it's just very obvious that this is. I think we are 4th in the money puck odds to win the Stanley Cup, or at least win the Eastern. Sorry, to win the Eastern Conference, or 4th amongst Eastern teams. Like, if we make it, we're the best team. We're like, depending on how you view the metrics, somewhere between 3rd and 6th at 5v5. We're an incredible team. We're very fucking good. And Ullmark, since he's come back from his leave, which small sample size, broken up by the Olympics, I get it. And look, the stats out of the Leafs game are not going to look great. And certainly not the fact that technically the first Leafs goal was at 5-on-5. Like, it wasn't, but it was technically. Doesn't make it look great. But I trusted Ullmark in that game. I was fine with Ullmark in that game. Certainly was fine with him certainly was fine with the goaltending against Detroit. Like, I'm certain to believe. Like, I'm really starting to believe not just that we could squeak in as an 8 seed, but like, I'm starting to believe that we're as good as any team in the East. The East is not very good. I mean, honestly, if you want to have the conversation about like the entire league, outside of Colorado and Dallas, I'm not really sure anybody's actually any good this year.
So two things. One, on Allmark, I think there's an achievable middle point between the body language that we're seeing from him and what we see from Jordan Binnington, perhaps like at the Olympics. The Binnington is like the epitome of challenging the shooter 4 feet outside the crease. Allmark seems a little bit, I don't know, less than confident right now. I'm not seeing the best body language out of him. I'm hoping for a big game against two of the most elite players in hockey on Tuesday. The second thing I want to say, Evan, I had an interesting back and forth today with the one and only Grant McCagg on Twitter. He basically was questioning these money puck odds, and I had to explain to him like it makes sense when you look at and this is a Habs fan, by the way. One of the most insufferable Habs fans, I'll add. It makes sense when you look at the model inputs, right? Why are these websites and stats aggregators saying all these good things about the Ottawa Senators? It was because, and we've hammered this home quite often on your podcast, Evan, the Sens are about as structurally sound as it gets. You're talking about the team that's top 10 in chance generation. They're finishing a high percentage of those chances. But most importantly, they are the top rated defense in the league. Look at any metric: scoring chances against, slot chances against, inner slot chances against. And Habs fans should know because they managed 7 shots on goal at 5-on-5 the last time they saw the Sens. This is a force to be reckoned with if and only if uh, Linus Allmark's 905 save percentage in his last 10 starts can sustain itself.
Yeah, this is the thing with the Sens is that there's two types of like there's two distinct types of sort of like March and April sort of like streaks into the playoff teams. There's the team that was better that was performing worse than their metrics, whose performances start to match the metrics, right? And they're hot at the right time because of sound structural play the entire time. And then there's, I hate to be rude about this. This is, of course, Sens history, the Hamburglar team, right? Which was a product of a semi-fraudulent run by, look, I love Andrew Hammond. I love that team with all my heart. But like the Hammond run was obviously a fluke because a career AHL goalie played out of his mind for 20 games or whatever. This team is so much more structurally sound than the Hamburglar team. And I think the sort of like thing that people don't understand, and this is, you see it in soccer, I'm a big English Premier League fan, people don't want to believe the metrics because people want to believe that these performances they're actually true. They've actually found something in those performances that proves that actually the fancy stats are fake. And you saw this early in the season with Aston Villa in the Prem this year. Like, the expected goal is actually they're in a title race. They're barely in a race for Champions League spots at this point because at the end of the day, your expected points, your expected goals, your expected results come a knocking. And the thing with this Sens team is this team wildly underperformed. Depending on how you break out the stat, the Sens were, an 800 points percentage team with like 875 goaltending or above, not 900 or above, 875 or above. They were like an 850 points percentage team. They're elite. And I think the performance against Detroit and then the just absolute destruction of Toronto proves that point incredibly true. And I mean, I texted you at Saturday night before the game, right? We're going to cave the shit out of the Leafs. And then we did. Like, that was one of the most satisfying regular season Sens games in years. It was so good. We're so much better than those frauds. I was thrilled.
Well, I asked myself after that game, I said, wow, isn't that just the inherent frustration here about the Sens season? Like, when's the last time I've seen this good a hockey team, and just in terms of the process, in terms of how they conduct themselves in the defensive zone, in terms of how many chances they generate, just the uh, in the aggregate, the process is enviable. I've said this before. I haven't seen that kind of a structurally sound team. I don't know, maybe since the '07 team, Evan. I haven't seen this. And that's what's frustrating. We're trying to battle for a playoff spot and we're gonna get in from the back door here. That's what's frustrating about this team. But look, if anything, if all else fails, at least we sent Steve Dangle and the rest of Leafs Nation into a spiral.
I texted you like I think after the third or fourth goal that I can't wait to watch the LFR on Saturday night. It did not disappoint. I hate watching Leafs fans videos. It has become one of my passions this year. Um, Turns out Mitch Marner was not actually the problem with the Leafs. The problem was that the Leafs fired Kyle Dubas 6 weeks before Marner and Matthews's moves kicked in. But hey, it's not like anybody fucking told you that'd be a bad move. Oh wait, literally everybody with the brain. But I digress. We've got a West Coast road trip coming up. Edmonton, Calgary, Seattle, Vancouver. Two of those games before the deadline. I think two of them after. Um, Edmonton's first up. They're reeling, though they did just trade for Connor Murphy. I don't know if he'll be available for the Oilers before they play Ottawa on Tuesday night. What are we thinking? 6 points out of the road trip, and we're probably pretty firmly in a playoff spot. 5 is sort of the break-even point. Given that the Oilers are the best team out of the 4 that we're going to play, and even they're extremely rickety. I feel like we're the best team in all 4 of the games that we're about to play, right?
Yeah, I'm going to need a lot from Linus Ullmark. We're probably not going to keep the Oilers to sub 20 shots the way we have with like our last 7 opponents. 7. We're going to have to face Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, who are feeling all this pressure to do it all themselves. And sure enough, they usually do. At the end of the day, though, like uh, 6 out of 8 points puts us in a really, really good spot. I think the other more challenging matchup is the Kraken, because they're a pretty good home team and they're actually qualified for the playoffs right now. At the end of the day, the Sens really need those 2 wins this week before the trade deadline. I don't think Steos has many more questions to answer before Friday. I think the plan is generally set, but it would add just a little bit more pressure on this management. I think, as you correctly stated on the last episode that we did on the Sens, to do something to to basically hit pull the trigger on whatever he's been working on for months. The guy has done a lot of scouting. Him personally, the staff. They've gone into Pittsburgh games. That they've had lots of chats with the Canucks, and we'll talk about this later. He's obviously got some options, and then it's about the timing, right? It's about the timing of the trade. Is it good? Is it the appropriate time to pull the trigger on something big now, or do you wait until the off season? But those 2 games, Edmonton and then Calgary, wow, the vibes would be at an all-time high, Evan. You win those 2, you're 8-1-1 in your last 10, and confidence is just oozing out of this team.
I think the performances against Detroit and Toronto should honestly have Steos in a buy now mood. Now I'm gonna trust him to not make a stupid decision with quote unquote buying now, and that's fine. But the we came out and kicked ass 2 games in a row. We didn't look rusty. We didn't look quiet. You know, Detroit, obviously, we didn't get the win. It's frustrating that we couldn't get a second goal in that game, but the team was dominant all night. The same as against Toronto. We came back, everything clicked into place. We are an elite team. And I think Steos knew that. I think Steos knows that. I think he saw the way that we came out of the Olympic break. And I think, yes, beating Edmonton would be fantastic. Obviously, I think even getting a point there is great. We should be Calgary. I watched them against Anaheim last night. We're recording this on Monday. They're just not good. Like I'm really sorry to Calgary fans. They're not a good team. Their goaltending is incredible. They're not a good team.
Mike Moffat reminded us that yes, maybe the Flames are they're not losing 7. I mean, they're losing games 3-2 and 2-1 thanks to their goaltending, but they're not that bad. They're not Canucks bad.
No. And look, at least last night on Sunday night when I was looking for something to watch late at night, having Flames Ducks on was quite fun. But we really ought to take at least 6 points out of the West Coast. You have to look at Calgary and Vancouver as, that's 4 points. And then either 2 overtime losses.
Yeah.
Joey Decord's obviously incredible in Seattle, but that team is not that team is fine. That team is pretty good, but that team is very much an island of misfit toys, right? Like it still has not really grown into a cohesive something out of that expansion draft, right? It's like Jordan Eberle, a few for it's fine. That defense core is Jamie Lesniak, Vince Dunn, Adam Larson. It's a very it's a very weird team. Decord is very much the sort of glue that keeps that team together. Former Sen, I understand why we let him go in that expansion draft, but every time he's good, I still do. I miss him deeply.
It makes less sense though that we protected Philip Gustafson in lieu of Joey Decord and then proceeded to trade Philip Gustafson for Cam Talbot.
Yeah, well, that's not great. We don't talk about the Pierre Dorian era, okay? Yeah, it's a very complicated legacy. At some point during the offseason, we'll go through and do the full debrief of the Dorian era because the contracts he signed are great. Love having Stützle for this long. Love having Sanderson for so long. Even the Brady contract, I know that was a shit show at the time, but getting him for the length that he did, great work.
We've had some really good performances from some of these core players here after the Olympic break, and I know that Evan, you're really excited about Dylan Cousins coming into his own, proving the doubters wrong. I mean, he was cast as this 5-on-5 nuisance. I saw some data today that suggested that he's turned that around quite appreciably. He's in a 5-on-5 force. That line with Kachuk and Greg is just so dominant right now. They're carrying the play. They're scoring. I think the Sens will need a little bit more from Stützle and Batherson. Batherson had a good game against a very bad Toronto team, but I need the Sens overall are a pretty good finishing team. I will preface by saying that, but they just need a little bit more finishing when it matters. I think timely goals are a bit of an issue here. So it would be nice if, in addition to the airtight defense, we would have a little bit more scoring up and down the lineup. So I would like to see another line clicking at the same clip that we're seeing from Kachuk, Cousins, and Greg. I think Stützle might be battling something right now, but I'm really looking to Drake Batherson to get on a roll here. We know he's streaky, so what better way to start a good streak than that 2-goal performance against the Leafs?
Well, that's what I was coming to, which is that I'm so glad we've ditched Brady and Tim together, because not that those two don't work well together. They do. They clearly do. But we know they work well together. So I'm so glad that Travis Green has finally ditched that and gone to Cousins, Kachuk, which can at least let us know whether or not we can get something going with Stützle and Batherson. Right? It's at least a way of testing an alternative arrangement. I think Batherson and Stützle are finding themselves. I think I hope at the very least that Saturday night can be a sort of launching pad of that. And at the very least, it gives us another look in a playoff series when, hopefully, assuming that we can make it, it gives us another look. It gives us the ability to play different options. And I think it's very good for everybody involved that we are at least giving room for those different line combinations. And at the end of the day, if we decide that we're going to go back to Cousins and Batherson together and Brady and Tim, we've at least tried other combinations. But I do think Batherson and Stutzla are going to go on a run here, and I'm very excited to see what they do. What I'm also very excited about, and this will be the transition into the trade deadline preview. Um, we'll play the clip in a second, but when you were I think last time we talked about the Sens, might have been 2 times ago we talked about the Sens. You referenced a specific 32 Thoughts clip, which we'll play in a second here, but about Alex Anthopoulos and Elliot Friedman sort of comparing it to the 2015 Jays. Let's listen to this clip.
And I look at them with their underlying numbers, and if they can get saves, Kyle, that's the team from the Atlantic I look at that's kind of far out that can maybe make a charge if they get saves. I have a theory on what they've been trying to do, but it's something I have to check because I have a meter of, okay, they were mad at me a couple weeks ago. I'll just let them calm down before I make them mad at me again. But so I don't want to make any wild guesses, but I have a theory at what they're looking at. And I think we talked about this. Remember Alex Anthopoulos going out to get David Price because because their run differential was good, even if their record wasn't. Like they're +7.
You found a lot of interest in that clip, and you thought that was a quite interesting sell. Do you think that the Senators so far in this run, do you think the Sens have sort of justified that Anthopoulos comparison, and do you think that they've done enough to make Staios view this team the way that Anthopoulos viewed those 2015 Jays?
Oh, absolutely. I think their view has only hardened. I mean, we are obviously the victims of very bad goaltending, but one of the questions was whether this level of play was going to continue. Are we still going to keep opponents to 22 shots and give up absolutely nothing? Are we still going to finish when we need to? Is the power play going to continue performing? Is the penalty kill going to get better? Like there's a lot of positive answers to those questions right now. So I think Steos and company only feel more emboldened to pull the trigger on that. Now, I did reference the question of timing earlier here, but Steos has showed in the past, then when the opportunity presents itself, he won't be gun shy. We saw it last year with Cousins. We saw it with Zetterlund. And we saw it on I think, game 1 of the Stanley Cup final when we acquired Allmark. That was a bizarre timing to do a trade, Evan. And it's a bit of a middle finger to the NHL, I think. But yeah, and I think this is probably an unpopular opinion. I think the Sens have at least a good argument to ask for the 32nd pick in the draft. I think they did that with the Devils a couple of years ago. The NHL gave the pick back because they felt bad for this new Devils management, which had nothing to do with the previous management who committed the mistake. Does that ring a bell, Evan? That's exactly the situation the Sens are in right now. So I think Steos is, I mean, he's not going to assume that's going to happen, but he's got all the reasons to act with confidence. Underlying numbers, really good roster construction, team that is performing well right now. All the circumstances are there to pull the trigger right now, and I think on a longer term view, Evan, not making the playoffs will have serious repercussions. we're going to have a full summer of speculation. Is Batherson coming back? Does Kachuk really want to be here? It's not healthy. We need the progression to continue. We need this playoff appearance. We need to show that we belong. I mean, not only in the playoffs, but among the East contenders. So yeah, I think all the circumstances justify the boldness with which I think Steve Staios will act this week.
Yeah, and I think the 2 points that need to be made on this is one, and you made this point previously when we talked about this. Ottawa doesn't have a great track record of signing free agents. We got Claude Giroux, and we all love Claude, but he has a relationship to the city of Ottawa and to the to the National Capital Region. I actually don't know if I've ever told you this. He was at my not my high school graduation, my high school grad mass. I don't know if I've ever told you this.
Nice.
He,
Nice.
Somebody, one of my fellow graduating class members was his cousin or nephew or niece. I don't fucking remember. Niece, I think. But somehow was related to him. So like I didn't ask for a photo because that felt really cringe. But like, yeah, he was like in my high school gymnasium after the for the after party. So he has a connection to the community. He's always had a connection to the community. Like he was a different thing. We're not going to get somebody in for agency. Two, with extension rules the way that they are, you've already seen a lot of the class that's upcoming this year has already resigned. McDavid resigned at Edmonton. Kaprizov resigned in Minnesota. It's I think fairly likely that Quinn Hughes is going to resign in Minnesota for the next class. Or at least that's all the indications. He's seems smitten with Bill Guerin. So I just don't know that like saving cap space is that important of a thing, and I think that means that you take a swing on a guy for whom cap space is for whom cap is a quote unquote bigger problem. And I keep looking at the guy that you identified, Elias Pettersson. The Canucks don't want to retain on the salary, and you'll hear from Elliot Friedman again in a few moments once I make this point. But like, the Canucks don't want to retain. They want out of the Pettersson experience. Pettersson clearly needs a change of scenery.
Did you hear media availability today?
I saw the quotes. They're pretty much get me the fuck out of here, as politely represented as they are. It's an obvious one, and it's great by you to identify him as a target, but like, it's one of these things where, yeah, we certainly don't have a tradable first round pick in 26, but if the Canucks don't want to retain, I don't think they're getting a first. And at that point, you roll the dice. Maybe we solve that. Maybe it's not great, but I think it makes a lot of sense. We'll listen to Elliot right now, explain where the Canucks are.
Pettersson, one of the things with all the noise that's come out of there and all the news that's come out of there this week, one of the things I wanted to ask is if there was anything that was going on. Famous last words, but it seems quiet around him right there. I don't think the Canucks are eager to retain. It's a long time to retain for. And I think some teams have tried to ask them if they would consider it. And I don't think it's something they're very interested in doing. I've kind of wondered about Ottawa and Vancouver, if there's a match there. I've just over the year, people have kind of hinted there might be something there. I just have not been able to figure out what it could possibly be.
Maybe
I really think that you're right, that Pettersson makes a lot of sense for the Senators. Liam, your thoughts?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna outline the reasons that I stated. The Sens need a shooter. We talked about timely goals. Stützle needs a shooter in particular. He's a 3-time 30-plus goal scorer. I think he scored 39 one year and is career year, the year before his contract. He's got a lethal shot. All the tools are there to be Tim Stützle's trigger man. He's got reasonably good defensive numbers, Evan. I think Ottawa values defense, and they wouldn't just prioritize a one-trick pony here. I think they want someone who can bring the complete package. And I think one of the myths about Elias Pettersson is he's a bad defensive player. I don't believe that's true. There's the obvious Travis Green connection. I don't know if that's necessarily a plus here. I'm not sure what Green thinks of the guy. I think, if anything, I'm sure Green knows that he's got many redeemable qualities, but he knows the person. He knows his tendencies. So I wonder what scouting report Green would provide. And his value's at its lowest ever. Like this, you just said it. I don't think the Canucks are getting much for him if they're not willing to retain salary. And the Sens have a lot of center depth that they could send back. We alluded to this on the last episode. We're not talking about any of our top centers here, but we do have a glut. We have Stephen Halliday, who's shown a lot of promise. We have Ridley Gregg, who can play center as well. So that is an option. And the Sens, here's another little known fact. I have to tip my hat to Steve Stais and the management group here, because they astutely decided to carve out a little bit of cap space. And as you know, Evan, the NHL cap rules are such that if you have cap space, it does accrue over the course of the season, and you end up with a much larger number on deadline day. The Sens have $12 million in deadline cap space, and it reverts back to the sum of your AAVs in the summer. The good news is this summer, the cap's going up to $104 million. So the Sens have the financial room to do it. Whether they have the wherewithal is a better question. There's a few holes in the theory. I think the cap hit's an obvious one. Do you do that gamble of 6 more years, $11.6 million? You're gambling on a return to form. Is that what does your hockey ops department say about that? The Sens would need to play him on the wing, because you're keeping Stützle, you're keeping Pinto, you're keeping Cousins, and he may not want that. And I think this is probably the biggest obstacle. He does have a no trade clause. It's unclear if he'd waited to come here. So Evan, I'll conclude by saying this. This is a lot more me wishing this into existence than actually thinking it'll happen. But it's great to put it out there. And Elliot Friedman, he likes to be right. And he's leaving these breadcrumbs, Evan. And I'm getting more and more reasons to believe there's a non-zero chance that this happens.
So the 2 points I'd make is, one, we have 3 third-round picks this year, which I don't think people realize. We have our own, we have Florida's, and we have Washington's. Which none of which are going to be like terrible picks. They're all probably going to be relatively middle of that third round. And the second thing is, I just don't know who else is theoretically moving at this deadline that matches Tulowitzki in price, which is when you put Anthopoulos and the 2015 trade deadline for the Jays in the window, who matches that? Who is a big enough thing to compare to Price and Tulowitzki in that wild week in, I guess, what would have been July 2015, right? Nobody. Yep. There's no one else who I mean, look, obviously if this was NHL 26, maybe we trade, Brady and some picks for Connor Bedard or whatever, but like in, fucking reality, who else qualifies as that big of a swing? I can't come up with another name. I don't think you can come up with another one either. And I do think Stais and Andlauer, look, we can be plenty critical of them. The fact that it's taken as long as it has to get, to work with the NCC and, to get to the place that we're at on a stadium. Okay, that's fine. We can have that conversation in the offseason at another time. This team wants to win, and they get the market they're in. I just don't see them sitting pat with a team this good at the underlying metrics, especially when third round picks, and this is probably stupid, but third round picks are far more valuable in the trade market than they are as prospects, right? Because you need to hope that somebody else would have taken the same person with the third round pick that you have taken. So, do we need 3 third round prospects who are probably not going to be very much? Because that's just what third round picks usually turn into. No, we should do something with those. Keep one of them, but we don't have a first. We have 2 extra thirds this year. Like we don't have a fourth, and we don't have a seventh. But like, frankly, who cares about seventh? And then we've got basically all our picks moving forward. We have the draft capital to go do things, and I just don't see a universe where we're recording, next week and we're not upgraded. And I don't think we need an upgrade on defense. Like, we have a solid 6-man, 7-man defense core, really. I mean, if we include Nick Jensen, who frankly I don't really like in the lineup, but we'll tolerate as a 7th defenseman. And then if we need if we decide we need to risk something, Yakimchuk can come up. But like, I don't know that there's like, I think we need it up. We need one more top 6, or at least, can play in the middle 6, but high top 6 talent. We need another forward of that caliber. And I think Staios knows it. I think we're really that, not just from making the playoffs. I think we're one solid addition away from, winning two rounds. And once you're winning 2 rounds in hockey, you know how this works. You win 2 rounds, the chance you can win 3 and maybe even 4 is really not that hard, especially with Florida, clearly taking a step back this year.
And this is the thing: you only get so many chances at filling that kind of role, right? Like, who can fill that role of a first line shooter with Tim Stutzla? And this is an $11.6 million cost. AV and Lowers has to be on board here, and you only get one shot. And if you screw up, it's going to cost you forever. It's going to cost you your job. So yeah, no, I think this is far from guaranteed, but it's an interesting theory. And the reason it makes more sense, Evan, is because demand is low. There's a buyer's market overall, I think, but especially more for Elias Pettersson. His contract's an albatross, and the Sens need to be in that market of buy lows. The Sens need to be seeking out those opportunities of players who have those redeeming qualities, players who can turn it around. And you just need a really good scouting profile on him and any other player that you acquire. I think we talked about Mackenzie Weegar last time. That also needs to be, if that acquisition is made, which would make sense on the basis of, him coming back to his home, waiving his no trade clause to, play for his hometown team. You do need to have the scouting down pat. Is this a player who's declining, who's on the wrong side of 30, who's not whose best years are behind him, or is that a player that you can turn around in a better environment? I think there's a few more names I want to bounce off of you, Evan. Like, I've often wondered about Owen Tippett in Philly. He's also a sniper who's very, very fast. That's a player that I've had my eyes on for a while. Ridley Gregg makes sense going back the other way. By the way, his father works for the organization, played for the organization, I believe, Mark Gregg. And finally, I'll add, just because of this whole Vancouver talk between Friedman and Bukauskas that we just heard. I know Travis Green's a big Connor Garland fan, so that actually might have been who they were talking about. But I'm going to pretend it's Pettersson for now.
Garland doesn't seem like a big enough name to sort of warrant the general fascination. I mean, the thing about Garland, 27 goals and 31 goals the last 2 seasons, or sorry, no, that's wrong. 20 goals, 19 goals the last 2 seasons, 27 assists and 31, 2 50-point seasons. Capit's reasonable team looks like. I mean, he hasn't been very good this year, but like, has anyone in Vancouver looked very good? And frankly, how much do I really blame that on anybody on this Vancouver team? Probably wouldn't cost very much. Is a Travis Green guy. I see the Connor Garland. I'd rather tip it. I think I'd rather tip it than Garland if that's what we're doing here. But Garland's at least 29. He's at least on the right side of 30. And if we're trading for him, we're at least trading for, we're at least trading before the likely decline. I have no interest in anybody that like the Rangers are trying to sell off, or like some of the like older, more diminished guys. Like I just don't want to accelerate this team's age profile for like too much. And I do think some of the true buy lows, I would just put Ryan Donato back on the board. I know we both kind of looked at him last year. But I don't think Chicago's going to trade him. I think they've sort of decided they're keeping him. Now, neither of us saw the Dylan Cousins for Josh Norris thing happening. Do we think which I do think is a case for potentially Pettersson, but I just think for something big, neither of us had even heard a whiff of this, and then oh boy, that's the 10:30 on deadline day. That's happened out of nowhere. Do we think Staios doesn't seem like he really talks to people? Do we think that do we think that the Cousins for Norris swap gives us sort of faith that there is something more, something bigger, something more complicated potentially in the works?
Potentially, and I guess we just don't know. Like Steve Staios, and by the way, I'm a fan of an airtight front office. I don't like information being out in the open. I don't like our opponents being aware of our plans, what we want to do, what we don't want to do. So I respect the hell out of this front office keeping things close to the vest. I'm not expecting any kind of splash for any of the big names. I think Pettersson is exactly what we're talking about here. That kind of let's trade, let's trade for a player, maybe buy low and try and turn that player into a better version of himself. But look, let's just not be under no illusions here. The Sens aren't getting Jordan Kyrou. The Sens aren't getting Jared McCann, Robert Thomas, Alex Tuck. These high profile players don't want to play here long term. That's just not their. That's just not the what history says about the Ottawa Senators. I mean, you could probably make the case that Robert Thomas, might feel more inclined because he's Brady Tkachuk's best friend. But these are the kinds of loose links that you have to look for, Evan. Does the player have any connection to a player on the roster? Is he from Ottawa? Otherwise, it's not worth discussing. Elias Pettersson, though, is. I mean, if he chooses to waive his no trade clause, you need to jump on that kind of opportunity because that kind of talent is just not available to Ottawa in the trade market or the free agent market.
Last thing, Stephen Holiday. He's been incredible since he's been called up. You have been big on not just playing him, but playing him higher in the lineup. Take your victory lap. Take the sort of talk about what you've seen from him, not just in the a couple of games before, but after the deadline. But talk about what he's done before, and either as a trade chip now or as a playoff contender. I do think that's a very good sign for the Sens, and I just wanted to give you the space to you've been on him and you've seen the talent. I want you to take a victory lap.
Well, and if you look at his deployment too, and his production with those limited minutes, it's really incredible. Like points per 60, he's like in the top 5 of the league. It's absurd. This is someone who is obviously right there in terms of being a potentially middle six, top six player. He's not a baby anymore. He's 24, I believe. He's had, he's got quite a resume now. He's dominated the AHL. He's dominated his years in college, and this is someone who's an NHL talent right now. And I feel like, playing him on the fourth line is a bit of a waste, although, to a more for a more glass half full person, it may be a luxury. But I think that kind of what makes him expendable. I think there are teams out there who are scouting the heck out of this guy and saying, "Wow, there's a player there." He reminds me a lot in his play style of a young Jason Spezza. Just eyes around the head, great peripheral vision, knows how and when to make a pass. Just works that uh, board play so effortlessly and effectively. He's a really really good offensive talent, and I actually see him more on the wing than as a center. But this is a player who is a diamond in the rough. Like, this is a fourth round pick that the Sens made, 3 or 4 years ago, and it's turning out to be a Drake Batherson-esque, Mark Stone-esque type selection. So I'm really glad the Sens, absent an abundance of draft capital and good prospects, have found something good in Stephen Halliday.
Yeah, no, he's great. I remember it's not quite the same player archetype, but I remember the impact Matthew Nyes made on the Leafs in his rookie season. Now he was a college UFA who came straight into the team, but like that injection of youth and vitality and just a different sort of look in the Boston series. I know they ended up losing to Boston in 7 in that series, but like that, I do think people underestimate the sort of impact that internal development can have, and bringing in just a different shot of something middle end of a year. And I think we also underestimate how high those guys can play in a lineup. Halliday is very obviously used to playing big offensive minutes. I know that doesn't make him a better player in a vacuum than some of the guys who he'd be, playing with or playing above. But at the end of the day, we always see it, you want to spread your offensive talent out. And in a universe where Stützle, Cousins, Pinto are your top 3 centers, right? And you have Shane Pinto, who should not be a quote unquote third line center, as your third line center. That is the kind of depth that allows you to spread your talent out across 3 lines, across the wide swathe of the team. And I think he's an incredibly useful talent, and I've been enraptured by him. And I very much want. I've been happier to see Travis Green split up Stützle and Tkachuk. I absolutely want him to try Halliday up the lineup.
Yeah, I hope we see that in Edmonton and in Calgary too. I think there's probably there's one spot for him there in that top 6. Who knows? Maybe with Stützle and Batherson.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, you've seen plenty of quote unquote not as good, third guys on a great top line before. Michael Bunting was the first line center with, or third line winger, first line winger with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. Like, you don't need 3 elite talents on line. Sometimes you can have competent, good players. What's your final prediction for how many points they get on this West Coast road trip?
6.
I'm going 7.
7.
I think we beat Edmonton, we beat Calgary, we beat Vancouver, and we lose in overtime to Seattle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every game is so important at this point. I mean, if anything, it makes watching, watching meaningful hockey is fun at this time of the year. I didn't want to
after the number of years that we didn't have meaningful hockey in the second half of the season, the fact that we even have it right now, I'm not going to look past that.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's going to be fun because climbing that hill and making the playoffs would be quite an achievement for our Ottawa Senators hockey club, and it's exciting to tune in.
Very. Liam J. MacKinnon on Twitter. Thank you so much for coming on. You'll be back next week to review the trade deadline and the West Coast road trip. My name's Tim Scrimshaw. Follow me on Twitter at eScrimshaw. Just like and subscribe to this video. Follow this YouTube channel. I will at some point get this up on Spotify. Shit has gotten in the way of that, but I will do it very soon. Scriptunscripted.substack.com for my political thoughts. I wasn't going to tell you this on the pod, but I've just decided it will be a fun little, bonus for people. The latest NATO's just dropped. The bloc vote dropped 10 points week on week, and the Liberal vote in Quebec went up 10 points.
Well, there you go. More good news, Evan.
NATO's just the gift that keeps on giving. I despise it, but I love it for the unintentional comedy. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
See you next time.
Thanks.